The Great War was tearing Europe apart, its echoes reaching even the furthest corners of the British Empire. But in the remote, rugged heart of Victoria's alpine high country, a different kind of darkness was gathering, a silence more profound and terrifying than any battlefield. It was late 1917, and the air in the Wonnangatta Valley, a place of breathtaking, almost spiritual beauty, was growing heavy with an unspoken dread. Imagine a landscape so isolated, so untamed, that it felt like a world unto itself. Ancient mountains cloaked in eucalyptus, valleys carved by rivers that ran cold and clear, a place where time seemed to slow, almost stop, and the only witnesses to its secrets were the soaring eagles and the whispering winds. This wasn't just a place, it was a character in a story, a silent, imposing giant guarding its mysteries fiercely. For generations, the valley had drawn in those seeking solitude, those wanting to carve out a life away from the madding crowds, prospectors dreaming of gold, cattlemen seeking verdant pastures, and men like Barclay and John Bamford, who, for reasons we can only speculate, chose this wild embrace. They were two men from different walks of life, brought together by circumstance, and soon to be bound by a fate so brutal, so enigmatic, that it would echo through the decades, a chilling whisper in the Australian wilderness. Their story isn't just a true crime, it's a meditation on isolation, on the human need for connection, and the terrifying void that opens up when those connections are severed in the most violent way imaginable. This isn't just about who pulled the trigger. It's about what happens when the veneer of civilization thins to nothing, and the raw, untamed spirit of the land becomes complicit in unimaginable acts. It's a stark reminder that some landscapes don't just hold secrets, they actively guard them, burying them deeper with every passing season. Barclay, a man in his mid-50s, was the manager of the vast Wonnangatta Station, a life he'd carved out for himself after years spent as a prospector and stockman. He was a seasoned bushman, intimately familiar with every ridge and gully of that formidable terrain, a man who understood the language of Their relationship was one of necessity, two men dependent on each other in that remote outpost, their daily routines punctuated by the vast silence and the demanding rhythm of station life. They were the only two souls at Wonnangatta Station for long stretches, their nearest neighbours hours, sometimes days, away by horseback, a testament to the profound isolation of their existence. This wasn't just physical distance, it was a psychological chasm that separated them from the rest of the world, fostering a unique bond, or perhaps a simmering tension, that only two individuals in such a crucible could truly comprehend. The station itself was rudimentary, a collection of timber huts weathering the elements, a tiny bastion of human presence against the colossal indifference of nature. Their days would have been filled with the back-breaking work of cattle management, mending fences, riding patrols, and the quiet camaraderie, or perhaps unspoken friction, that develops between men thrust into such intense proximity. The rhythm of their lives was dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, the changing seasons, and the constant, subtle challenges of the bush. It's crucial to understand this backdrop, this canvas of isolation and rugged self-reliance, because it sets the stage for the incomprehensible events that would soon unfold, forever scarring the valley's pristine beauty with a mark of violence and unresolved mystery. The last anyone outside the valley heard from Barclay and Bamford was in December 1917. A supply run had been made, letters exchanged, the usual mundane communications that bridge the chasm of distance. Then, silence. Not the usual comforting silence of the valley, but a new, unsettling quiet that began to gnaw at the edges of people's minds. It wasn't uncommon for men in the high country to be out of touch for weeks, even months. But as the new year dawned and stretched into February 1918, a deeper concern began to brew among the scattering of stockmen and settlers who dotted the fringes of the alpine region. Barclay's cousin, a man named Harry Smith, felt the prickle of unease turn into genuine alarm. He decided to ride into Wonnangatta, a journey of several arduous days, to check on his kin. What he found upon his arrival on not merely empty, but eerily abandoned. The dogs, usually a boisterous presence, were gone. A meal was half eaten on the table, as if its occupants had simply vanished mid-bite, leaving behind a chilling tableau of normalcy abruptly shattered. The beds were unmade, clothing lay scattered, and the general disarray suggested a sudden, unplanned departure, or something far more sinister. There was no sign of a struggle, no overt indication of foul play, just the profound, suffocating silence of an absence that felt wrong. Smith searched the immediate vicinity, his calls echoing fruitlessly through the vast, indifferent landscape, the only reply the mournful cry of a distant bird. The sheer scale of the wilderness swallowed any potential clues, turning the search into a daunting, almost hopeless task. It was as if the valley itself had consumed the two men, leaving behind only the ghost of their presence, a chilling testament to the power of the high country to conceal, to absorb, and to keep its secrets locked away within its ancient embrace. The stage was now set for an investigation that would test the limits of human endurance and leave an enduring stain of enigma on a land renowned for its wild beauty. Harry Smith, a man of the bush himself, knew that the dangers of the high country. Accidents were common, sudden illness a constant threat. But the scene at Wonnangatta didn't feel like an accident. It felt orchestrated, deliberate, or at the very least, profoundly unnatural. He reported his findings, and soon the wheels of a rudimentary investigation began to turn. Police patrols, hardy men on horseback, were dispatched into the valley. The search was slow, painstaking, and hampered by the vastness of the terrain and the brutal alpine weather. It wasn't until December 1918, nearly a year after their disappearance, that the first grim discovery was made. Jim Barclay's remains were found in a shallow grave, about a quarter of a mile from the homestead, by a police search party. He had been shot, the bullet still lodged in his skull. The body was badly decomposed, making any further forensic examination nearly impossible. But the manner of death was unequivocal: murder. The finding sent a shiver through the small, isolated communities of the high country. Who would commit such an act in such a remote place? And why? The police intensified their search for John Bamford, the other missing man, but the mountainous terrain seemed to swallow their efforts. It took another year, until November 1919, for Bamford's skeletal remains to be discovered, some 3 miles from the station, partially buried in a ravine. He too had been shot. 2 men, murdered, miles apart, in one of the most isolated locations imaginable. The sheer brutality and perplexing nature of the crime immediately ignited a firestorm of speculation and rumor among the local population. Tales whispered around campfires and in isolated huts, each adding a new layer of mystery to the unfolding tragedy. The remoteness that had once offered solace now amplified the horror, turning the valley into a silent, watchful tomb. The police investigation, conducted in an era before advanced forensics and rapid communication, was an arduous and often frustrating affair. Detectives, accustomed to urban crime scenes, found themselves grappling with the unforgiving realities of the bush. They faced vast distances, extreme weather, and a scarcity of witnesses in a place where people were few and far between. The timeline itself was a major hurdle. A year between the disappearance and the first body, another year for the second. Memories faded, potential clues were lost to the elements, and the wilderness itself became an accomplice to the perpetrators. Several theories emerged. The first, and most enduring, focused on a man named James Dowie, a cattleman who had been known to frequent the Wonnangatta Valley. Dowie had a reputation for being hot-tempered and had reportedly clashed with Barclay over cattle boundaries and grazing rights. He was questioned extensively, but maintained his innocence, and ultimately, insufficient evidence existed to charge him. Another theory involved another local character, a stockman named Harry, the Hermit Powers, known for his reclusive nature and sometimes erratic behaviour. Powers was also questioned, but like Dowie, no direct link could be established. The remoteness of the valley also opened the door to stranger possibilities. Itinerant prospectors, deserters from the war seeking refuge, or even a chance encounter with... The police painstakingly interviewed anyone who might have had contact with Barclay and Bamford, trying to piece together their final days, their relationships, and any potential enemies. However, in a place where privacy was paramount and interactions often brief, reliable information was hard to come by. The inquests into both deaths returned open verdicts, acknowledging that both men had been murdered, but failing to identify a killer. This legal limbo only deepened the sense of unease and fueled the enduring fascination with the case. The Wonnangatta murders became more than just a crime. They became a cautionary tale, a legend whispered across the high country, a testament to the chilling truth that some mysteries are simply too profound, too deeply embedded in the land, to ever be fully unravelled, leaving behind only questions and the spectral presence of the victims. Now, let's inject a dose of controversial, perhaps even unsettling, philosophical reflection into this grim narrative. The Wonnangatta murders, despite the passage of over a century, refused to be relegated to the dusty shelves of cold cases. Why? Because they touch upon something deeply primal within us, the fragility of human order when confronted by the vast, indifferent power of nature, and the chilling thought that true justice, or even understanding, might be impossible in certain environments. I'd argue that the true killer in this story isn't just a person with a gun, it's the isolation itself, the profound detachment from society that allowed such an act to occur, and more crucially, to remain unsolved. In urban environments, a murder leaves 1,000 traces: CCTV, witnesses, phone records, forensic specialists swarming over every speck of dust. But in Wonnangatta, the crime scene was not a room. It was an entire valley, an entire mountain range, a canvas so immense that human investigation felt like a child tracing lines in the sand, only for the tide to wash them away. This isn't just about a lack of evidence. It's about the very nature of evidence in such a place. The wind erases footprints. The rain washes away blood. Decomposition is hastened by animals and insects, and the vastness swallows sound. Is it possible that the police, for all their efforts... Furthermore, let's poke at the unsettling idea that perhaps the pursuit of answers in such cases is less about justice for the dead and more about our own discomfort with ambiguity, our desperate need for closure to reassure ourselves that the world is an ordered, understandable place. Is it possible that the enduring fascination with Wonnangatta isn't about solving a crime, but about the terrifying thought that some horrors simply happen, unexplained, unpunished, swallowed by the earth? The local legends, the persistent whispers, the occasional armchair detective still poring over century-old documents, are these genuinely driven by a hope for truth, or by a more existential dread of the unknown? The valley, in its majestic beauty, becomes a metaphor for the darker, unmapped territories of the human psyche, places where our social contracts and moral codes begin to fray under the immense pressure of solitude and the absence of external judgment. When only two men are present, who truly knows what transpired? The Wonnangatta murders challenge our core assumptions about human nature, asking whether our civilized behavior is merely a performance for an audience, or if there's an intrinsic moral compass that guides us even when no one is watching. The fact that the perpetrators were never found, never brought to account, allows us to project our deepest fears onto that empty space, turning the story into a Rorschach test for our anxieties about violence, isolation, and the terrifying possibility that sometimes the monster simply walks away, absorbed back into the silent, watchful embrace of the wilderness, leaving only a haunting question mark in its wake. The Wonnangatta murders, over a century later, remain a chilling testament to the enduring power of the unknown and the profound influence of landscape on human drama. They stand as a stark, rugged monument to the limitations of human justice when confronted by the vast, indifferent majesty of the natural world. This isn't just a tale of two men murdered. It's a profound narrative about the Australian high country itself, a land that gives life with one hand and reclaims it with the other. A place where secrets are buried not just in shallow graves, but within the very fabric of its ancient mountains and whispering forests. The unsolved nature of the case it's a story that forces us to confront our own comfort with ambiguity, our desperate need for closure, and the unsettling realization that some questions are simply destined to remain unanswered, echoing through the ages like the mournful cry of a distant bird. The Wonnangatta Valley, once a place of rugged beauty and arduous pioneering spirit, is now forever imbued with a spectral quality, a place where the wind carries not just the scent of eucalyptus, but the faint, unresolved whispers of a century-old tragedy. The legacy of Wonnangatta isn't just in the absence of a killer's name, it's in the quiet, persistent unease it instills, the way it reminds us that even in our interconnected world, there are still wild places, both external and internal, where the rules of civilization fray, and primal instincts, both good and terrible, can hold sway. It challenges our very notion of control, making us question whether humanity truly dominates the earth, or if, in certain untamed corners, the earth still dominates us, dictating the terms of life and death, and even the fate of truth itself. So, as we close this chapter on the remote alpine mystery, let the silence of Wonnangatta linger. Let it be a reminder that some stories refuse easy answers, that some landscapes hold their secrets tighter than any human can, and that perhaps, in the vast, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying wilderness of existence, not every loose end needs to be tied. Not every question needs to be answered. Sometimes, the most profound truth lies in the lingering enigma, the chilling whisper carried on the wind, a perpetual echo in the heart of the high country.